So another aspect of what I would call kind of my five activities or 5 pillars of what one can do to find oneself, an area that I really appreciate is the area of money. Specifically in my mind, trading and investing, as well as entrepreneurship, but trading and investing is a huge one, particularly in trading. Because when you start making trades and those trades start making moves, once you've pushed that button, you'll find things out about yourself that you didn't know existed. It's kind of like, it's really one thing to sit on a hill and chant Om and be enlightened, but when you're facing the true threat of losing or winning a lot of money on an investment decision, you'll learn things about yourself that you would be surprised. One of my major aspects of my playbook in investing and trading is listening. I love to incorporate multiple subject matter expert voices into my realm and to listen to what they have to say and to incorporate that, whether I agree or disagree, incorporate that into my own playbook. Because one of the things that I have learned through the years, my few years of trading, is that I don't want to be trading a name if I don't believe in it. Tom Nash falls into this category in terms of where I sit with this. I met Tom. I found him on YouTube, just like many others. YouTube is probably one of my favorite media sources because of the amount of choice and the fact that if I don't like something, I can kind of skip through. But Tom caught my attention quite a few years ago, right around his time of, he was kind of lampooning Dan Balzerian, I think is his name, during Dan Balzerian's Playboy years. I think he's kind of making this, Dan Balzerian is making a resurgence now, and he's kind of become a little bit more authentic, if you will, it seems. He's trying to like put down some of the shield that he had up before, if I could put it honestly. But Tom kind of caught him in these years. I think he had a brand that was, and the way that Tom lampooned him was just brilliant in that he did all of this research. He did due diligence on a publicly traded company, and he did it in a very irreverent, no bullshit style, and that immediately caught my attention, and I had to know more about this guy. So I actually joined his community 2 or 3 years ago, and I have to say, you know, if you search for Tom Nash enough on YouTube, you're going to find people who are going to talk shit about him and whatnot, but his no bullshit style is who he is. He's authentic. And funny enough, despite the fact that he loves to talk on his channel, you'd be surprised he's an amazingly good listener as well. And that plays into how he does his due diligence and the way that he kind of operates as he approaches his own investment decisions. And he does the exact same thing with most aspects of what I've been able to learn from him as well. And funny enough, he was the main voice to get me to start this show, to start this channel. And I appreciate him heavily, and he said that he wanted to be my first interview on this channel, so I have to oblige him. I haven't talked to him in a while, but he's been influential in my life in more than just helping me to make good investment decisions. He's also been influential in getting me off my ass to actually get this show started, for what it's worth. But what I really appreciate about Tom is you'll notice at least a theme probably in this show that I have a real special appeal to rebellious and irreverent nature. It's what I have inside me as well. But Tom's got that as well. He's got a no bullshit style, and it's real. He calls bullshit on anything when he sees it, and if it's really good, you know it's really good. And even if you disagree with him, you can kind of see his point of view. I really appreciate his method for analysis. He comes from a line kind of similar to me in consulting, of going into a client's office and trying to dig for the dirt to figure out where the bacon is being hidden, if you will. And I really particularly appreciate his ability to combine his prowess with numbers, with his ability to connect that to a story. Not necessarily a narrative that he wants to hear, but he's able to tell a great story with the numbers and kind of dig into that. That's how I discovered it with this Dan Balzerian thing, is he really put things together, and it was brutal what he was able to do. And he's done that with a number of other folks as well. He's not really the type to just bully people with it, but when he smells bullshit, he likes to call it. And I do have to say he has saved me from a number of bad decisions with this kind of work. And I think that you're going to find that his style carries through in his entire personality. I really appreciated the opportunity to interview him. This is part one of, I hope, many once I finally get off my ass and start doing a little bit more. But yeah, and I don't know, we connect on quite a few areas. This interview was mostly focused on just kind of his ability to and what he's about and kind of his start and where he came from. And I hope to have some more as we go through.
Professional.
Yeah. Feels professional for a first time here.
Yeah.
So let's just jump into it here. I think the major context here is I've known you and kind of been a part of what you've been doing for at least 2 years now. It feels like, probably going on somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And you know, I come on and off, you know, there's times when I'm too busy to watch all of your videos. So this is kind of maybe a little bit of a catch up for me as well.
What's the last video you watched on my channel? Be honest.
Oh my God. Well, I've been watching some of the things about what's going on recently, right? With the Fed.
Yeah.
And but I haven't pulled too much specific, mostly because I've been so distracted myself, but that's not your problem. That's mine, right? But to me, it's not necessarily
I was more relevant over the past week than ever before.
Why do you say that?
I feel like my content was a little bit of me focusing on myself and not on my audience. And then when the collapse of SVB happened, and I decided just to make like kind of a PSA kind of video, just because I thought people are freaking out, they need to know what's going on. And I wasn't thinking, oh, how many views is it going to get? How many more clicks? What's the monetization going to be on it? Like, I didn't think like a YouTuber. I was like, oh, my community wants to know something about this. I have to make it super informative. And the response was insane, bro. I had like 700 people subscribe in a day. And everybody watched that first video about SVB. People called me, haven't watched my videos in months. Hey, we saw that video. And then I realized, oh shit, I've been so caught up with this YouTube stuff, I forgot like why this is a thing. It's like so obsessed about the numbers. It's like, this is what people need. And I'm like, if I'll do that good enough, eventually the other stuff I'm chasing will come through that. So I basically changed my whole setup in my brain since the SVB video. And I just basically started, okay, what does my audience is interested in the most today? What do they need help with the most today? And let me just make a video about that and not worry about views or clicks, and make it as short as possible. Because like on YouTube, you're incentivized to make longer videos. So like, let me make it as short as possible so people don't waste more than 5-6 minutes on that. Me do it as early as in the morning as possible, and as clear as possible what the video is going to be about, instead of all this looking for clickbait and algo reaction, etc., etc. Just put in the title exactly what the video is about. And it's been fun. I feel like I'm back to actually like the sources of where this whole thing started. I got lost in the numbers and the money, and I'm back. It's fun.
It feels like that's something that could be really easy to fall into, though. You get what you measure, and you work towards what you measure. And you've always kind of had that structure a bit to you, right? Like with you know, you give the meat of the video early on, and then if you want to stick around, how is that, like, as kind of a fairly successful YouTuber, trying to walk that line between, you know, staying true to that feel that you're talking about now versus you know, being, I guess, the noise of all of the YouTube statistics telling you what you should be doing and what they choose to show. How do you do that? Like, kind of, what's your philosophy on that at this point right now?
Now everything has changed. Now I feel like I've been reborn. So maybe this insight happened because I've been getting healthier, a lot healthier over the past 10 days. I've been cleansing myself of all this fat and negative energy and bad food. I've lost a good 16 pounds in the past 9 days.
Damn.
I don't know if you can see on my face, it's getting a little bit thinner, but there's still a long ways to go. Still almost 30 pounds to go. But I've been sleeping well. I've been working out. I've been doing this 1 meal a day thing, which is fucking brilliant. It's amazing.
I've been
Yeah,
doing the same thing
it's
since
amazing.
October. Yeah.
I never
When do
felt
you eat?
better.
What time do you eat?
One, it's so
That's
good.
about when I do it too.
It's so good. It's a life changer.
Hmm.
First of all, like the I've never felt less hungry in my life. I don't know why about this. Number two, I've never felt more energetic. My sleep has improved. Everything, stamina. I ran up the stairs today. Usually it would be a struggle. Today would super easy, 5 flights of stairs, like nothing. So yeah, I've been doing that over the past 9 days, and maybe that Silicon Valley original video happened because already in that state of mind when I was thinking clear and not like I'll go. Like, but if you're asking me what now is my focus, is like my whole focus is like I'm delivering kind of like a present to my audience, right? And I want to, like, if I'm giving somebody a present, do I want them to be excited about the rapper, or do I want them to really like the present to fit what they want, need? You know what I mean? So the selection of the it needs to be custom. So I've been so busy with the rapper and the instead of thinking about what's the best gift, and then now every day starts. Okay, what can I give my audience today that they need help with? And
It's interesting because
if you
YouTube,
cut
you
out
would,
all you cut
yeah,
out all the bullshit, you mentioned the other bullshit, and you basically say, well, I don't care if this YouTuber gets this much views or this YouTuber gets this much views or this much views. It's just about, let me like provide the best value I can, and if that doesn't lead to financially viable results, then it is what it is. But that's a whole different topic. I, I can discuss with myself in 6 months to see if it hurt my business or not.
yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like YouTube seems to drive you? And this is just kind of off the cuff here. Does YouTube kind of make you feel as though you have to be on and be nailing it every day? Because I think that's
Yes.
probably an unrealistic expectation, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, it's a hamster wheel. It's a hamster wheel because we get addicted to the attention. Like people who do this and they get traction, it's kind of misleading because you think, okay, so the money is addictive. No, it's not about the money. It's the attention. Think about how many people are craving this attention, the ability to speak and others to listen. It's so fucking rare.
Mhm.
So imagine like I do it every day and like there's a stadium full of people, like 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people who watch it in a single day. I mean, that's insane. So that's yes, I think I'm an addict to that for sure. So in your question, what you're asking, like, it definitely like that's what the one part I need to work more on is like how not to be like always in that kind of mode of like on the one hand you want to do something like extraordinary and work super hard. On the other hand, you don't want to be a slave to that thing and that it consumes you. You understand
Right.
what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that's like it's a very tough balance.
Right. And it's funny because like hitting the mark with somebody is a qualitative aspect. And yet they're trying to break it down into number of views or what
Yeah.
are kind of some of the key statistics that you're getting fed that
Oh,
seem
you
to be meaningful or not?
well, the YouTube gives you a lot of statistics, like endless. You can dig into like YouTube Studio and dig into stats you wouldn't believe. But I tend to look just on the simple stuff. I look at how much people are watching from the video. So if I see that, I look at the average view duration of the video, and that's how I know if people are enjoying the video or not. So based on my own prior experience, I know if the video is like doing 50%, then people are kind of like, okay, the video is okay, but whatever. But if I get a video with 65, 70% view duration, then I know I hit the nail on the head and people are really like sticking through the entire video. And that's kind of tells me, okay, this is what they want to see more of. And obviously I look at click-through rate. Then that's how I know, okay, so this topic wasn't interesting today. Maybe not. But I just like in my, if you ask me what's the most important one, it's view duration. That's how
Hmm.
you know if somebody is enjoying it or not. And it's such a high when like you hit the perfect, like you know, if you play like basketball and you hit the perfect shot. Like the perfect shot is a video that it's super clickable, everybody clicks on it, they stayed for long, and it provides a shit ton of value and people subscribe because of it, and you're proud of the work. Because sometimes the video would blow up and you're like, what, why did this thing blow up? It happened to me a few times. But like the
Right.
perfect combo is like when everything is aligned. And if you're writing a song, right? Imagine writing a shitty song and it becomes a hit. Remember when George Michael wrote what's his I forgot the name of that song that went ballistic.
Last
Um,
Christmas.
no, that was one of the, but there was one with the fuck, I forgot the name with the saxophone. Something with the,
I
there's
know
a
what you
famous
mean.
George Michael song. Everybody knows this tune, and he hated this motherfucker. He
Hmm.
hated the song so much. He wrote it in like 10 minutes, and he
Hmm.
fucking hated. And the song is like defines him, and he hates it. So the idea is like the the perfect video is one where you proud of it and people that love it.
Yeah.
That's the perfect combo.
And it's funny because like I'm just kind of starting into this pathway, much to, you were kind of one of the influences saying I should be doing this, right? And so I'm like
Yeah.
kind of learning from you some of the traps that one can fall into. And and as I'm at this very entryway of this world, there's a lot of concerns that I have. And it's kind of funny because it's just like that's one of them is I keep thinking I'm a big fan of watching Frasier from back in the day. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
there's one where he doesn't win the award. And like the guy that does win it is like, I don't really care about this award. It's about the body of work. And
Yeah.
you know, here it's easy to say because I'm doing my first video here with you, right? So it's like, yeah, it's about the body of work, but I can totally see how those statistics can throw you off and change the world. And the dopamine that everybody talks about from just a good
Yeah.
tweet that somebody's like, oh yeah, this is great, and you get a bunch
But
of
the tweet
retweets,
is
and all of a
different.
sudden
A tweet is this when you're tweeting, you're seeking attention. Pure.
yeah,
It's just about look at me. I'm smart. Look at me. I'm witty, whatever, right? So with you putting out a podcast, it's different. You're not seeking attention. You're providing, oh, here's an interesting conversation for you guys. It's a different, it's easier to stay on the path of value versus
yeah,
like with podcast it's super easy because I mean and also like think about it this way, because in the beginning nobody's going to watch this, so you can screw up as much as you want and nobody will care. It's
right,
such a liberating feeling. You can do whatever you want with this, and you're not financially dependent on this, which is even more fun. Like it's absolutely, it's bliss. You get to do and try it out, and if you don't have any clock on this, you know what I mean? There's no like, oh, I got to make it work in 2 months or 3 months or 6 months or a year. You're just basically
totally.
having fun.
And I don't want to keep it there. So that's where you can coach me through it as I go through it, right?
Yeah.
One question I have, and this is kind of maybe an appropriate area because I really want to kind of try to find a through line. And this is like the big picture for me is, people have watched your videos. They may or may not, they may have come in at a certain point, one place or another. I feel like I'm one of the OGs, been there from the beginning,
Yeah.
right?
two
Maybe
years.
not, but
I think you might be one of the first ones.
I might be. And I've gotten a ton of value out of it, obviously. So what I'd like to try to do is take this through a through line and kind of get to some of the glue. One of the best phrases I've ever heard from a mentor of mine is, he's got thousands of pages of scientific notes, but the big part that is missing is the glue that holds it all together. And
Yeah.
so kind of what I'd like to do is see if we can go through in a series of these interviews and get to the glue that holds this all together, right? And so one of my major questions is kind of like, how did you get here? Like, what are kind of the influences that brought you to saying, okay, I want to do YouTube. I want to do financial YouTube. Do you have any people or experiences that brought you to this point? I mean, obviously, like that got you into YouTube, that got you into podcasting and providing this kind of information for folks.
It's a good question. So let me think of what kind of financial creators I was watching before I was doing this. I was definitely watching Meet Kevin, but I was watching him because it was making fun of Grant Cardone, which was fucking hilarious. He was making fun of Grant Cardone, and he was a funny dude, and he was a genuine guy. I liked him a lot. So I was watching him for sure. I think he's the only one who I knew of. And I think the way it happened for me was very organic. So I was doing YouTube videos for a while, as you know. Every whatever like I was curious about that time, I had my channel focused around it, and it never got more than a couple of hundred views, and I never really minded at all. And then I did this for fun, and then I made a video about the guy called Kevin David. He used to sell courses, and then that video, I forgot about the channel. I didn't upload for like 3 months. Then I came back, and that video had like 100,000 views. I forgot. I didn't even check views. I was like, oh wow. And then I was like, maybe people want me to do more of these. Let's see if there's any other similar ones. And I started going down the path of looking at these course seller gurus, et cetera, et cetera. And people really clicked with that. And then that really started the kind of the journey for me. And then as this was going on, I was like, well, this is fun. But I mean, like CoffeeZilla does it and it does it better. I mean, I'd rather watch him do it than me do it. So why would anybody watch my channel? I mean, and I was like, okay, what can I do that's a little bit different and more interesting to me also? It's like, oh, I can really go for the financial side of it, not just like the cringe or the comic stuff, right? And then my first attempt was basically proving that Dan Locke, you remember him? Dan Locke, the guy who sells the
Oh
courses.
yes.
I proved that he's like a middle class dude. He's not really a millionaire by basically doing some little bit of investigative work. Anyways, I found his actual house. He lives like in a 500,000 home in British Columbia. So
Mhm.
basically, and then the video that actually got traction, I was like, oh, who's this Dan Bilzerian dude? Remember that? Like, this is fucking
That's the next
ridiculous.
place I want to go with you. Actually,
Yeah,
this
and
is
then
that to me is that's where I found you.
and then I found out he has a public company. I was like, this motherfucker has a public company? How? What does it do? And then I started looking into his public company. I was like, well, that's a horror show. What is this? And then I made the videos that basically blew up. That's what catapulted my channel. Then from that, I was exposing Nikola, the public company with the fake trucks. And then after that, I was already kind of talking about the stock market. And I was like, okay, let me make some positive content. I've been doing so much this negative shit. Let me see if there's actually good actors there. And then I got into stocks. And then whenever I mentioned stuff about macro, people seem to like that. So I shared more of my macro stuff, and people really seem to like that. And now I guess I'm way deep into macroeconomics than anything else. Uh, not super interested in individual stocks anymore because it's a treacherous road. I mean, people seem to really like get annoyed when you don't hit it right. The problem with like with individual stocks, it's like shooting 3 pointers. The best ones they shoot like Warren Buffett said he had like 6 or 7 good picks in his life. Like absolute like out of the ballpark picks, and everything else was kind of okay. So, and when you're putting every single pick out there, like most of them are duds. It's like it's hard to explain. So I was like, yeah, this is like people seem to really get annoyed when one of your picks is doing bad, and we all have bad picks, bro. It's like, oh, this is I should stay away from this because um I don't think it's gonna long term. It's very hard to hit every single pick right, and especially if the market goes south like it did, like everything you talked about goes down. Then people bring out, but you said this stock is a good idea, and then it's like, okay,
Yeah.
so that's how I basically started here, and I got all the way here, which is kind of just talking about economy, macro,
Mhm.
geopolitics, stuff I care about. People
So
seem to
let's
be
go
interested.
back. Yeah, let's go back actually because that was the you fed right into my other areas. I
Yeah,
really
Dan
wanted to
Bilzerian,
revisit
bro.
the Dan Bilzerian area
What a
because
character.
so
You know what's
so
crazy about Dan Bilzerian?
what?
Over the past few years, a lot of people who actually know him personally reached out to me for different reasons. And all of them, even the ones that don't like him as the boss, the people who used to work with him, for him, It's whatever. Like some people generally like, and they all say, no matter what, like Dan is the most respectful guy we've ever worked with. Like he's such a nice guy,
Hmm.
and he's just, like, and it's such a different persona than what you see on Instagram. Because I haven't heard one person say like something bad about the character of the dude. They're all like, in person, he's a really nice guy, very respectful, etc., etc., etc. So he's not a douchebag in real life. He just plays one. But that company was a train wreck, bro.
Right. I mean, so first of all, that's interesting about him because I've just the way that he portrays himself
No,
is
he's
so
not a
counter
douchebag.
to who I am, right?
But it's an act. That's what I figured out over the past few years. It's an act. It's an
Yeah.
act, and he's just playing it out. But it's not like he's actually genuinely nice guy.
Hmm. So using him as our first model here, right? Because to me, that's the glue that started making me take interest in some of the work that you do, is and it feeds into the stock, the way that you work with stocks. And I know you don't pick them anymore, but you still have your favorites, and there's reasons why that
Well,
are
my favorites
beyond
haven't
just the
changed. It's just
numbers.
Tesla and
Yeah.
Palantir. Yeah.
But you look at numbers. I know you do that because you have your methods for that, which I want to dig into. But when you hit, for example, what is it? Ignite was Dan Bilzerian's. Is that, am I saying it
Yep.
right?
The
Bilzerian.
Canadian Stock Exchange.
Yeah, which
The
is
stock
I
exchange
remember.
where you want to go when you want lax regulation and
That's exactly.
really nice regulators. Which
That's
is,
like the first hint, right?
yeah.
I guess.
Well, one thing you don't want in your regulators for them to be super nice, and in Canada they're super nice and accommodating. The stock market regulators.
Yeah. So when you started into Ignite and Dan Bilzerian, what was, like, you're kind of an investigator, right? So what was the first clue, right? Where did you start? How did you start digging into that case?
Bro, the minute you open the financials, if you have any sort of financial background, your eyes are flying out of their sockets. It's like this company doesn't make any sense. It looks like a 15-year-old is managing it. I kid you not. It's like you look at, okay, so how much revenue they have? 2 million. How much they spend on marketing? 30 million. What the fuck? And then you go through the marketing expenses, and it's like Star Wars kit. Like the question stuff like that. It's like, what's going on? And then you look, okay, so um like the company I think was leasing the name Ignite from Dan, and he had the deal for that. But the company doesn't make any money, but it pays him for the logo, which has like crazy shit like this.
But you saw
And
these in the numbers, right?
you can easily see it because you see in the income statement, you can see exactly what's the company, what's the expense structure, what's the revenue structure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you try to read it, it's like, okay, so how are these guys even planning of making money? How are they making now money? What, like, there's like nothing makes sense, bro.
Mm-hmm. And
And
from there,
then
you took the numbers.
people started reaching out, and they're like, oh, we used to work with Dan. Every party was supposed to be a promotional party, cost the company like hundreds of $1,000s. But I mean, it made no, like, like one guy told me uh, they were making a party, and then they realized they needed a license for the liquor in the party, in the where, and they couldn't get it, so they put like the alcohol, like crazy shit like this, bro. This company was a mess.
Yeah. But it all started with the financial statements that
Yeah.
you could look at them and it kind of popped out like beautiful mind. The numbers just kind of pop out
No,
to
you
you.
don't. No, it's not that complicated. It was glaringly obvious.
Hmm.
Don't give me too much credit.
No, I mean, well, somebody like me, this is not my specialty, and that's what I think is what's so special about this. I'm really fascinated by genius, and I'm not talking about
It
that. And
wasn't anything
again, people
genius,
are going to
bro.
think I'm
You look
blowing
at the
smoke up your ass.
assets, you look at the liabilities.
Yeah.
They had more liabilities than assets. Its
Mm-hmm.
company was insolvent.
But that doesn't tell a story. And you were able to not only tell a through line story as it developed, but you were able to pick small things out, like, and then get people to tell you, which I've always found very fascinating. And you did the same thing with Nicola, right?
Yeah, Nicola was fucking epic. Nikola was epic, and it was intense because they tried to take me down.
And did that also start with the numbers?
Nikola started with logic because they came out and they were all the hype. And then, oh wait, no, Nikola, how this happened? So I got a tip about Nikola. One guy called me. He's like, yo, I'm a big fan, blah, blah, blah. You should look into Nikola. It's a shit show. I was like, okay. And then I started looking into the company. I was like, okay, so this is a pre-revenue company. Got it. And I started looking at the company. It's like, it didn't feel right. So I was reading through the offering documents. It was a SPAC. I was like, oh wow. So they're talking about this truck, this pickup truck called the Badger, which they're launching. There's renderings and everything, but the motherfuckers didn't mention it. Like on the documents that they just put out 2 months ago, basically trying to hype the company up about all the good products they have, which is what you would expect to find it. So they just decided they're making a truck and they already have renderings and everything in 2 months. It's like, what? Like, this truck is 2 months old and they already have renderings. Bro, Elon Musk is working on the fucking Model 2, whatever it's called, for years. He's still not showing it, motherfucker. Everybody is angry showing these fucking towels. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
The white towels. Is like, anyways, so that was the first stuff. And then you look at the numbers and it doesn't make no sense. It's like, you look at how much money these guys. So they had a running model of a hydrogen truck, like a prototype, and looked beautiful. But then you look at the financials and you realize it cost them like 40 million to build it, bro. And like none of it was theirs. It was all proprietary technology of Bosch. So they basically paid Bosch $40 million to build a prototype hydrogen truck that had no Nikola fucking technology in it. And then you start digging through the history and you find out, okay, so Nikola became, so and then I found out Nikola was a subsidiary of a company called Worthington Industries. And then Worthington Industries basically said, oh, fuck it. I don't want any of that. And the Worthington Industries COO became the CEO of Nikola. And then Worthington actually got an exemption. Nikola allowed them to sell their stock immediately upon the SPAC. You know, if there's a lockup period,
Yep.
like when you're a SPAC investor, you can't sell for a while. So Worthington got an exemption. So Nikola basically paid off Worthington not to tell anything about the stock, so they can get out at $80 or 70, whatever. Like there was a, you know what I'm saying? Like, so they knew it was a horseshit. And then like, why would Worthington invest in this company? And then I found, okay, so just a year ago, this company was basically a company that was converting it was building natural gas trucks. So these motherfuckers went from natural gas trucks to hydrogen in a year. Like, what the fuck? It's like, and then they were talking about building infrastructure for hydrogen. This shit would have cost them like $70 billion, bro. Like the stuff that they were saying like didn't add up. It was like, how would you build the refueling stations and the cash burn versus like none of it made fucking sense, bro. It's just, it was like the numbers need to make some sort of plausible sense. And
yet this is a company that seemed to fool a lot of investors, or was it just traders? I mean, how did they get by?
Because of the people they got on there. So they had some really famous investors, and they had some former GM guy who was the head of the SPAC that took Nikola, and they had like they have really like good roster of investors. The same thing, like how did people fall for Elizabeth Holmes, all these famous people,
or Sam
how did all
Bankman-Fried?
the famous people, excluding myself, I fell for it also for FTX. I did the FTX ad for a whole month on my channel. So how did it happens sometimes?
It's there, yeah. BlockFi, I mean, it's there, and
No,
it's kind of interesting.
BlockFi, I knew. I told BlockFi to go fuck themselves immediately when they approached me. But
Nice.
FTX, I didn't. I was so mesmerized by all the celebrities and everything, and I was like,
there's a lot of noise, you know what I mean? And that's like when everybody's like coming back on the
But with
blowback for
FTX, the
people.
one problem with FTX, you don't have access to the financials.
Mhm.
They're a private company. If we had access to financials, nobody would have invested, or nobody would have worked with these guys. But
Yeah.
the beauty of it, there was a private company.
Hmm. Another one, and it's kind of funny because now you feel like you're back with yourself on talking about all of this stuff with Silicon Valley Bank. Another one I
Yeah,
recall, funny enough, off the top of my head, is the Boeing situation when the 737s, and then also all of the
yeah,
Chinese stocks.
yeah.
And
China is a crusade of mine.
yeah, we will dig into that, believe me. But with Boeing, for example, I remember you were giving quite a few videos talking about what was going on there and making sense of that mess and why the stock
Yeah.
was so high. I remember looking at Boeing and it was huge. Like the stock was it seemed to never have been affected by this
But my,
737
my, my analysis
nonsense.
had nothing to do with the stock price or the financials. I basically said one thing. I said Boeing was a moral analysis. So there's okay, maybe a good video for the future. But the Boeing um, criminality, which is exactly what happened. The Boeing criminality that murdered hundreds of people stemmed from the primal mistakes they made in the original merger they had with the McDonnell Douglas. That was my video, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
My video was, look, Boeing used to be a terrific company. So how would a company that's like a prime example of great engineering, great American engineering, ends up with this criminal fucking behavior, basically not letting pilots know about whatever, like whatever happened with this 737-8 Max. And then I started digging into it and I found out what happened. Basically, Boeing got got the short end of the stick. So Boeing basically bought a company called McDonnell Douglas. So in the merger, Boeing was the bigger company. And McDonnell Douglas is notoriously known for very questionable engineering. They actually killed the Concorde. I don't know if you knew this.
Mm-mm.
So I don't know if I mentioned this in the video, but when I was doing the research, I found that out. You know how British Airways and Air France were trying to kill the Concorde for a while? It's like they were
Mm-hmm.
just looking for the excuse to kill it.
Yeah.
So there was the famous accident in Charles de Gaulle with the Concorde, and it had nothing to do with the Concorde. So basically, what happened is a DC-10, McDonnell Douglas DC-10, which is one of the worst airplanes ever made. A fucking piece of metal fell off it as it was fucking taking off, bro. I'm not even kidding. Piece of metal, bro. Imagine how bad this
Mm-hmm.
motherfucker is. And that piece of metal, the unfortunate thing, that the wheel of the Concorde basically went over it and catapulted into the wings, and it went through the wings like a fucking like a bullet. And the fuel tanks were in the wings, and basically it killed everybody.
Wow.
So, and then obviously BA and Air France basically, and they killed the plane,
Mm-hmm.
which like they were dying to kill that plane for a while. So basically, no, they said, hey, you know what, Concorde, can you please just put Kevlar all over your airplane so this doesn't ever. And while they were doing it, they killed the plane. Like they go, oh, we're back from the Kevlar refitting. It's like, we don't want the plane anymore.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
how. So, anyways, so McDonnell Douglas was supposed to basically be swallowed by Boeing and inherit its beautiful culture. But what ended up happening is the amazing culture of Boeing got contaminated by the toxicity and poor fucking engineering of McDonnell Douglas. So essentially, what Boeing has become after the merger is like a bigger McDonnell Douglas. I'm not even kidding. And
Hmm.
one of the craziest decisions they've made is to stop building planes. And I don't think people understand this. So Boeing does not build planes anymore. FYI, PSA. They have so first so they decided first of all to relocate their management away from the manufacturing, which is crazy, bro. They relocated the whole management, I think, to Chicago, and they were building
Yep.
planes in Seattle. Like, okay, makes sense. And then all the engineering got replaced with all fucking finance people. And then the brilliant finance people who replaced all the engineers basically said, well, why shouldn't we? We need a plant in a cheaper location? Like Washington is too expensive. Seattle, Washington is too expensive. Let's do it in South Carolina, where people absolutely don't have any idea how to build planes because it's cheaper. And then they started building planes there, and then they said, well, why should we build planes at all? Let's just have other people build the plane for us. We'll pick a location that's cheapest for every single part, and then they'll ship all the parts to us, and we'll just assemble this motherfucker because it's going to be cheaper this way. And that's how they've been building the plane since the 787. 787 is not built by Boeing; it's assembled by Boeing.
Yeah.
And there's literally plants everywhere in the world. You can throw a fucking pen, and it's probably there's the wings are coming from. Anyways, so that mentality of maximizing profits, all about the bottom line, the financials is everything, etc., etc., instead of the engineering part, that birthed that decision. Basically, well, we're competing with Airbus. The Airbus 320 is an amazing plane. It's newer. And the 737 is an older plane. It's a newer plane, and now they're like 30% more fuel efficient because they got this new engine. So we can use this engine, but we're too low to the ground because 737 was built when the sleeves of you did not exist. The sleeves, when you go down the sleeve, so you had to go to the bus would take you to the stairs, and there was a stairwell that you would take to go to the plane. So that's why the Boeing 737 is lower to the ground for that purpose. It's like, oh, so we have to put the engine higher than it is right now, so it doesn't fucking scratch against the ground. But if we do that, we change the entire aerodynamics of the fucking plane, because the whole fucking gravity center of the plane changes completely. Everything changes. So we have to retrain pilots. And then it's going to be less attractive for companies, because if we say, well, you shouldn't buy the A320, buy the 737-8 MAX, but you just need to retrain all your fucking pilots. Then it's like, we can't do that. So let's have a computer software fix that will readjust the positioning of the nose and not tell anybody about it. And that way we don't have to retrain the pilots. It's a plug and play. And then that system malfunctions, of course. The pilots are not even aware that you can disengage it, or what the fuck even is going on. Fuck disengage it. They don't even know that the plane is basically trying to kill them. A bunch of people die. Boeing says nothing. Nothing. And then the second plane does that. And then they finally start basically, they try to blame the pilots, like whatever. Like 2 planes later, hundreds of people later, they basically say, hey, there's this thing called the MCAS in it, and you can disengage it if it malfunctions, we should have told you. And then nobody went to prison.
So
and then nobody, and then at the end of this, nobody went to prison.
Oh, no. Of course not. Just like with
nobody went to prison.
All financial crises.
Nobody went to prison. They fired the guy who was like the head pilot or something, because it was his fault. And then that was it, bro. And that's why I don't fuck with Boeing.
So let's bring this back to you, though, right? Because this seems to me
was that not a good story? I think it was a good story.
Well, yeah. And what I'm thinking, because number one, you say it's obvious, but it's not obvious to most folks, I would say. It's not obvious to me. I'm not a dumb guy. I come from the world of consulting. I can follow a through line, but it's generally coming from somebody who picks this up themselves. This is,
by the way, after I did my video, there was a Netflix documentary, which I haven't watched yet. And I assume a lot of the stuff are in the Netflix documentary.
Right. So where did you learn this way of chaining events and numbers and everything together? Because this, let's just treat it, even if it's not, even if everybody does know this is a good skill.
It's public information.
I understand it's public information, but most people don't dig this way, like you do. I mean, obviously your job now is to promote or to give this information out to folks. But if it was BS, like if I was doing what you're doing, it would come out and it would be BS, right? It would be a bunch of nonsense and it wouldn't make sense. And I don't think that way. It's not the way I think. Is this something you were born with? And everything, all my questions are going to sound like I'm blowing smoke, but I'm fascinated by the way people think. Did you learn this in your time as a consultant? Were you trained in, is this the kind of work you did when you were working for some of the other groups before you became a YouTuber?
In a way, yes, because when I was so I worked for a bank called Society General, Société Générale. It's a French bank,
Oh
but
yeah.
it's a massive bank. I used to work for their U.S. bank, and within that, I used to work for their alternative investments division, which is pretty much their investment arm. Um, the- it manages like $100 billion or euros. I don't even remember at this point. So that was a very different job than what I ended up after I left SG. I went to Deloitte, and in Deloitte, what we used to do a lot is financial due diligence and market research and vendor due diligence. And basically, when you do this sort of transactional work, you can be like a technician, right? Or like which wasn't a part of my job. Luckily, my job was a little bit more kind of abstract. So, for example, like my job would be to service a client who comes in and says, "Hey, I'm a big corporation, I'm a big multinational. I have all these implications that I want you to look at, and this is the company I'm looking into, and I need you to tell me, number one, if they're trying to hide anything. Number two, if they are trying to hide anything, is this a no? Is it a deal breaker, or is this something that's we can help potentially? It can help us reduce the payment or the consideration, right? Explain to me the risks, and then explain to me what would be the best way to structure this deal financially and legally, so we pay less tax on the purchase and on the ongoing flow of money through that new company all the way to the parent. um, and what would be the regulatory aspects of that legally of owning a company, and that's how much would it cost for us to take the IP out of there? Or maybe it would be better to leave the IP there and just take out dividends, whatever. Do you see where I'm going with this?
Mm-hmm.
And um, what's that technology is even like, what it is worth, what's the market cap of what they're doing. I mean, is this tech even good? uh, so you have to understand the whole fucking business, like from everything to that work. So because at the end of the day, like 3, 4, 5 months later, you're supposed to say, well, this is everything you need to know about this company. Everything you need to
Mm-hmm.
know about this company. How this is everything you need to know about how the fit works with your company. This is both the due diligence side, the structuring side, the legal side, the obviously the tax side, etc., etc. So you there's detective work there because it's adversarial. So the good part about it, unlike now, is like when you do this work, the target of this acquisition is mandated to cooperate with you because
Mm-hmm.
it's in their best interest to get this deal done. So they're mandated to cooperate with you, but they're trying to throw you off as much as possible so you don't find the bullshit. But they cannot lie to you. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
very delicate balance. So they cannot lie to you, but on the other hand, they don't want to help you. They won't say more than they have to because there's implications, right? Uh, or for example, like I had a client who comes in and says, "Hey, I have this great tech. I had this. I can't forget this deal. It was such a crazy conversation, bro. I'm not going to say the client name, but I will say the company that we were working like. So my client had this amazing technology, and it was the client was trying to get a deal done with General Dynamics,
Mm-hmm.
major company from major U.S. contractor. It's a behemoth, bro, massive, and we were supposed to help them get this deal done. And the idea was, okay, so this we have this tech, we're a company, and these guys want this tech. So what's the best way to sell them this tech? Is it give them a license? Is it sell them outright completely? Is it for them to swallow the whole company? How much? What would be the tax implications, the regulatory implication, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And I remember this like also adversarial because then you're basically you're talking with the business people from from General Dynamics, and then the risk people jump on board, and they don't like the risk people have zero interest in the deal getting done. You know this, right? So they don't give a
Mm-hmm.
fuck. So they'll do anything to fucking torpedo the deal because they don't want to take any risk. You understand, like, the idea. So then you're adversarial against them, trying to defend the deal. So everything about it is always like adversarial, investigative, and you always have to find creative solutions. So Deloitte was the best school I've ever been in, bro.
How long were you there, roughly? I mean,
10 years. I
wow.
went from a senior associate to a manager, and then to a senior manager.
Mhm.
Senior manager for Deloitte is big deal, bro.
How many people are working? What was your team size when going into one of these
About
kinds of
15
projects?
people.
15 people.
Yeah.
Each with their own separate expertise?
Kind of, but not really, because there's no expertise in our team. It's like when you're doing transactional services, in that aspect, like transaction, it's a big definition, right? But
Mhm.
when you're doing actual qualitative work like this, like you kind of have to be like the handyman. So you have people who are better with numbers, people who are better with legal documents, people who are better with accounting. Yes, but basically everybody knows it's very different than how everything now is specialized, right?
Mhm.
But this is kind of like being a Navy SEAL. You have to know a little bit about everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
So
as a consultant, I'm totally with you, and
yeah,
it's right there. So
it's a tough gig,
really,
bro.
yeah. Well, you come from, and part of the process that I've worked with is an investigation process. Not, but we don't get to go that deep. That's why it's so. But what you're talking about is very fascinating. So you're almost like hardened in the trenches of like playing the game of like find the BS in a pile of, you know.
Also help them. Like, for example, Mike, there's a friend of mine who's also a senior manager for Deloitte. Was no longer there anymore. Also, he was working on a deal, and sometimes it's not adversarial. It's like, okay, you're supposed to tell both parties on how to structure the deal so you have the best tax result, for
Sure.
example, right? And he told them, and when you do like multinational transactional planning, like as a from a tax perspective, you look at both countries in question, and you look at this thing called the mutual tax treaty between
Mhm.
two countries, and then that mutual tax treaty basically says, well, that's kind of the manual of how the tax is divided between the two countries. And then he planned it out, et cetera, et cetera. He sent them on their way on that aspect, and then the deal went forward. And they were about to sign the fucking deal, and then he comes in one day and said, "Oh, I think I'm going to prison." I said, "Why?" In the tax treaty that we analyzed, there's a threshold that you must own 10% of that subsidiary to qualify for that dividend withholding tax, and they own below 10%. And nobody in my team caught this, and I was reviewing everybody's work, and I didn't catch this. Now the deal is about to get made, and we're talking about 5%. It's a lot of, we're talking about billions, bro.
Mhm.
And he was like, "This is going to be a big." He's like, "I'm never going to work in this industry again." And then like one mistake over 10 years, I know this guy is the most fucking loyal, detail-oriented guy I've known in my life, bro. And he fucked up on one little thing, bro. And eventually the deal fell through for different reasons, and he was off the hook. But imagine like the stress in this work, bro, is fucking insane.
Oh, I get you. I get you. So if you had a process, if I'm kind of pulling back from, and we got to kind of close this out for tonight, but the first
We
part
have
of your
time.
process is in
We have
was
10 more
in
minutes.
exactly. I want to respect your time. We'll do this. We will continue. This will be to be continued, but
Yeah.
your process generally, at least on surface value, before kind of learning more about your background, starts with the numbers.
Yes, always.
Mm-hmm.
It's always about the numbers first. Think about it, like everything is all about the numbers. Even when you whatever you're analyzing. I like, now everybody's talking about the Fed, right? Do you
Mm-hmm.
care about what Jerome Powell thinks? What does he likes? What is his feeling is? Like, no, it's all about the numbers, bro. It's always the numbers.
Yeah. And then from the numbers, where do you go?
Logic. Then logic and common sense.
So do you start asking questions? So if you've got an adversarial team that doesn't want to answer those questions, how do you get to the bottom of those types of
Oh, that's
things?
easy. Yeah, there's ways to do it. So let me find a good example for you. I need to think what I can say, what I cannot say.
Yeah, I'm throwing a few
Uh,
heavy ones.
no, I'll give an example. Hold on a second. So let's say that you're doing a due diligence, right? And let's say that these guys have, for example, they have, when you're reporting on accrual basis, right? You make a lot of the decisions on how you present numbers. Because like when we work on cash basis, like as individuals, there's no real issues, right? We deposit the money in our bank when you get a salary, you pay the tax or whatever, right? With a company, the reporting has to do a lot with what the company thinks, right? If you, for example, if you have a lawsuit, it's your job as the person who's getting sued to decide what's the likelihood of this lawsuit costing you money and how much, and that amount has to be written off, okay, as an expense.
Hmm.
As it's kind of, never mind. So the fair market value adjustments, etc., 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 etc. So there's ways to find out where they don't um, see it. For example, they would say, well, we think there's over 50% chance that this is not going to hurt us. I said, fine. Did you, well, who did you consult on getting to this 50%? That's the question number one. Because like, oh, we just think that. Okay, then you know it's bullshit, right? And as they say, well, we have a legal opinion or an accountant opinion or memo. It's like, okay, let's see the memo. And then you open the memo and the guy is like, yeah, well, it's a 50-50. I was like, okay, so it's not, so you know what I'm saying? And yes, well, did you have any discussions with the local regulators about this? And then they'll say, if you say, well, yeah, we had a few. So can we see the minutes of the discussions and what was asked, what was said, et cetera, et cetera. So there's ways to kind of figure out what's actually like. If you've done this job before, you know what I'm talking about. It's like there's a paper trail everywhere, and there's always like a procedure. So um, there's ways to do it.
Sure.
It's not you don't fight with them, like there's no shouting and anything. You just put them in the corner, like for example, like you would ask, well, you have this company and this company, like inefficient tax structures, and I would ask, well, why did you structure the flow of money like this and not in another way? And they would say, well, it's just kind of all the ways we always do it, kind of always how it always was. And then okay, so they have like their fucking tax structuring is shit, and it can be better. Maybe an opportunity for my client. If you take this and we restructure it, this is going to be the cost of restructuring, but they've never done this, and so you see where I'm going with this.
Oh, totally. That's how it's always been done. That's like that just
The worst
put
answer,
a big
yeah.
red circle on it. You know that you can target onto that. That's interesting.
When you ask this in a room full of people and they all look at the CEO and nobody, you know what I mean? It's like when they fucked up. The silence and they all look at the CEO because nobody wants to say it.
Totally. So with like going back, you mentioned something with like the Nikola stuff and all of that. What was the blowback from that when you started to expose this?
Oh, they shut down my channel. They filed a complaint, and then YouTube shut down my channel. And I had to call Financial Times and ask them to do a story about this, and they agreed. And Nate helped me from back. Nate was the guy from Hindenburg Research. He was also fighting them, and I called him and said, "Hey, listen, Nate was the one who exposed them with that famous short seller report. You remember that?"
No,
and
I don't.
So the Nikola stock started to collapse when a short seller by the name of Hindenburg Research came out with a very 2 years worth of you talk about investigative work where they interviewed people, like recordings, like insane. So the report was so fucking damning and full of proof. Stock crashed, right? And he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I like your videos, etc., etc." And he made so much money off the short when this thing started. And I called him and said, "Hey, Nicola is trying to fucking cancel me." He's like, "I'm gonna get you fucking Scud and ARPs. I'm gonna pay for all your legal representation, so you fuck them." I said, "Let's do it." And then it's a lot of money, bro. Like, um, and then and then he said, "You know what? Before we do that, let me get the Financial Times to talk to you about this, because he knows all the reporters." And then they did a story about it. And then the next day, Nicola basically got kicked out by, basically YouTube got my channel reinstated and basically realized it because FT called YouTube PR for response, which I couldn't do obviously. And then YouTube PR had to fucking figure out what the fuck happened here. And then they realized Nicola was abusing their copyright. There's a way to copyright videos.
So
And
was
that
there financial blowback back on like Nikola during this like kind of implosion of their stock from the Financial Times article as well, or no?
no, it was such a dumpster fire. Nobody cared about a little YouTuber, bro, and his
Mm-hmm.
fucking. But the story was good, and when that very lovely reporter called YouTube for response, that what got them, to looking. Then they looked at the case and they said, "Well, yeah, obviously this guy should not have been kicked out of YouTube."
Mm-hmm.
But before that happened, I was sure I lost the channel completely.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. Well, one of the things, because I've always been fascinated, and thank you for kind of going back through how you approach problems and all of that. I think next time, what I'd like to ask you a little bit more about kind of is like, where should we be looking now? It's always fun to go back, and I'm always fascinated because I've
True.
followed you through this history. You don't need to answer it. This will be our cliffhanger. Let's just leave this as a
Yes.
cliffhanger, right? Because right now you're kind of dealing with the Silicon Valley Bank. Yeah. So what's like the big takeaway on that one? If you could sum it up in 30 seconds, what's the one thing that everybody should know about Silicon Valley Bank and kind of where that puts us right now economically?
So okay, so Silicon Valley Bank in 2 minutes executive summary, because that's what we have, is a very simple case of a bank that went heavy on startups and growth, and it worked for 40 years. They were the go-to bank for a startup with a 30-year-old founder that can't get finance anywhere else. They would give you finance, and the only recourse is the shares of your company. No collateral, no nothing. Crazy, right? But it worked. In the pandemic, when everything went up with the low interest rates, with the stimulus and quantitative easing, all of their clients blew up. Their deposits went up by 90% at that time. They were sitting on a pile of cash. They had to park it somewhere. So they did the safest thing possible, which is buy treasuries. Now they put it in long-term treasuries because they were greedy. They they wanted the extra interest from the from the long ones. And then the Fed basically did a 180 and sent all their clients to the toilet. All the clients started withdrawing the money, and deposits, instead of going up, went down by like 13% in the first like 3 months of 2022. And all of a sudden, the money that they have parked in treasuries, they can't take out, because when interest rates go up, treasuries value goes down. It's inverse. So they were still stuck on basically massive losses on these bonds. And originally they said, well, we don't care because we're just going to sit on these bonds forever. So we don't care if the market price of them falls. We hold it till 15 years, 20 years, we get it, then no loss to us. But now there were no liquidity. Companies are basic, and they had no retail clients like you and me. It was their only deposits. Only deposits is these startups.
Right.
So they had to sell the bonds at a major loss, and the geniuses over there didn't want to spend any money on insurance like interest swaps to hedge the risk of interest spikes. So they basically ate the whole loss. Word got out, people started pulling out the money, and then Peter Thiel, I heard rumor, was angry that they fucked him on some deal. So basically went on Twitter, said, everybody panic, SVB. And then he fucking killed SVB on the bank run. That's what happened with SVB. Systemic
Wow.
risk for the US banking system? No. Some regional banks maybe have to scramble a little bit. No systemic risk to the US banking industry whatsoever. Very
So we're
unique
seeing a
setup.
lot of overreaction right now.
Yeah,
Then.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Interesting.
Super banks. Look, no bank, if we all run to the ATMs right now, no bank can withstand that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the super banks are so well. I mean, this is not even a blip on the radar, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, they
Interesting.
don't have startups. They like Chase and Bank of America and Wells Fargo don't lend money to fucking startups, bro, for a good
No.
reason.
Yeah.
Like they work with you and I. 90% of our money is always in the bank. We don't withdraw most of it. Even after we die, it's always in the bank. So
Yeah.
it's super. So that's why with startups, that's the working capital. That's 110% of Silicon Valley's deposits came from credit that they gave to companies.
Mm-hmm.
So you have, for like JP Morgan, it's like 3%.
Hmm.
and 0%. You see what it's a very
Totally.
no banking collapse in the US. Sorry for the doom and gloomers. It's not going to happen.
I like it. It's easy to get caught up in the doom and gloom. But what I do want to know, and we'll save this for next time, and this will be a good adjourn, we'll adjourn here, is kind of where do you see things going? And kind of think about that, and we'll come back to that. And I want to use this process of yours to hit that. Not to mention, I've got some other questions. I've just started to scratch the surface. So thank you very much for the time.
And we'll see you in part 2.
If you made it to the end of this interview, I want to tell you I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention. I know that that's extremely valuable, and I will promise you I'm going to be working to bring you more, so stay tuned.